Fauvism and Expressionism, Week 3. Okay, so first up, I fully pulled a classic me move with this task and I ended up having to do it twice. So I thought I was being organised and getting ahead, but I skimmed the instructions and looked at a bunch of Pinterest inspo on the suggested board and just went for it. But yeah, I completely missed some of the main requirements, which was sticking to a limited Fauvist colour palette. So my first attempt, I actually really liked visually. I think it looks expressive and kind of chaotic in a good way. And it did successfully create an invented emotion, but technically it wasn't very Fauvist. I used way too many colours. Some of them were pretty natural skin tones, and I also worked directly on top of the reference photo, which I know was suggested as like a possible classroom activity with the younger students. But for this task, it meant I relied too much on realism or getting it quite close to the reference photo instead of pushing the abstraction. So it worked on the emotional level, but it didn't really meet that Fauvism criteria, especially in terms of the colour restriction and the intentional use of tonal value. So that's why I redid it, and I honestly think the second one is way stronger in a more abstract sense. So the invented emotion I came up with for the final portrait is something I'd describe as present drifting guilt, which is basically that feeling when you're physically in a situation, like you're in class or you're with people or somewhere where you know you should be fully engaged, but mentally you've completely drifted off into your own head. And it's not just daydreaming in a relaxed way, it's like a mix of detachment, disassociation, and like the guilt or obligation that you're not fully engaged. So you're aware that you're not fully present, and that awareness kind of creates this uncomfortable tension. It's like your brain is somewhere else, but a part of you is still anchored in reality, going, you should be paying attention right now. So it's not peaceful, it's actually kind of restless and slightly uncomfortable. So you can see in the face the eyes aren't fully focused. They feel slightly distant, like they're not locking onto anything properly, but at the same time they're not completely blank either. They're just looking away. There's still some awareness there. The tilt of the head also kind of adds to that feeling. It's not upright and engaged, it's slightly slouched and angled, which gives it that sense of drift or the lack of grounding. I think the emotion comes through more in the colour and mark making than just the facial features, which kind of the whole point. It's not just what does the face look like, it's what does the feeling look like. So moving into the colour scheme, this is where my second attempt really fixes what I did wrong with the first. This time I stuck to the limited palette of 3 to 4 main colours, which really important to that Fauvism. The main colours I used were green, red, and like blue, purple tones. And instead of trying to match the skin tones, I used the colour expressively, which is the key Fauvist idea. So for example, I used the cool blue and greens across one side of the face to create that detached, distant feeling. And then I went in with warmer reds and purples on the other side of the face to bring in that sense of emotional tension or the discomfort. So the face is kind of split between those two emotional states, being mentally elsewhere but also feeling pulled back. The background also plays into this. The red and green contrast is really intense. They're complementary colours, so they naturally create that visual tension, and that tension reflects the internal conflict of the emotion. So instead of just being a background, it actually reinforces that feeling. Something I paid a lot of attention to was tonal value. And the contrast, which actually gives the face form. I tried the idea from the video where you kind of squint your eyes to simplify what you're seeing and helps you focus on the value instead of the colour. Like the video said, the tonal value actually takes precedence over colour in making the portrait believable. And even though I'm using green highlights and purple shadows, they still function correctly in terms of the light and dark. One of the main oil pastel techniques I used was layering. Instead of just putting down one heavy colour, I built up colour gradually using lighter applications and smoothing. This allowed me to help blend the colours together and create more depth, especially in the face where the multiple tones overlap. I also used a mix of heavy application in areas where I wanted the strong colour intensity and lighter applications where I wanted just a little bit of the paper to show through. You can actually see in the background it has the rough grainy texture because I didn't want to fully blend it out like I did the face, because I felt it gives it more energy and stops it from feeling too flat. Another technique I used a lot was blending, both with my fingers and just layering colours over each other, especially little bits of white. Instead of fully smoothing everything out, I kept some visible strokes, which adds to the expressive, slightly chaotic feel. I also used something similar to scrumbling, where the colours are dragged lightly over the surface so the underlying colours could still show through. That helped create the kind of vibrating effect between colours, especially in the hair. There's also line work over the top, almost like a sketchy outline that helps bring some of that definition back into the portrait after all the blending. And I didn't want to go super refined with it. I wanted it to still feel loose and expressive rather than polished. Comparing this to my first attempt, the biggest difference is definitely the control and intention. The first one felt like I was experimenting more with colour and not really thinking about the colour limitation, tonal structure, or Fauves principles. Whereas the second one, even though it looks more chaotic and abstract, it feels more considered, and there's actually more structure underneath it. And I think the emotion comes through stronger because of that. Like, it's not just random colour, it's colour used to communicate something very specific. Overall, I actually think messing up the first time helped me understand the task way better, because I could clearly see what wasn't working. The too many colours, too close to realism, not enough attention to the tonal value. And then consciously fixing those things in the second version, the portrait feels more aligned with the Fauvism, especially in terms of the non-naturalistic colour, the limited palette, the more expressive mark making, and the stronger tonal contrast. And I think the invented emotion, that kind of drifting but guilty disassociation, comes through not just in the face but more throughout the whole composition.